Hello, welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Key Lime Interactive. My name is Kelly Narcisse, and I'll be your host this afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. So we're excited to talk with our Director of Quantitative Research, Dana Bishop, about our Mobile Banking Competitive Index report that will be released on June 30th. Dana joined the team in January and brings with her a wealth of experience working in the banking industry. She has 20 years' experience in user research overall, with a concentration in the area of banking and financial services during the past 15 years. Previous clients that Dana has worked with include Charles Schwab, Citibank, HSBC, Barclays, Wells Fargo, and many more. Dana has more than a decade of experience running annual competitive benchmark studies for the banking industry, and this includes measuring and tracking how the online experience for both prospects and customers of the top banks has evolved. She's also fielded competitive banking studies in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. So this leads us now to present day, where Dana is leading our Mobile Banking Competitive Index reports, which is published biannually. So before getting the conversation started, let's quickly cover a couple of guidelines to keep in mind throughout the next 30 minutes. We want this talk to be interactive, so there will be 2 channels where you can ask questions in real time during the webinar. The first spot is you can post your question in the chat window you will see on your screen, or you can follow the conversation via Twitter using the hashtag KLIEvents. We have allotted time at the end of this discussion for Q&A, and we're going to do our best to get to everyone's questions. For questions we may not get a chance to answer, we will email you directly with a response after the webinar. So without further ado, this is a great place for me to have Dana kick off the first talking point.
Okay, thank you, Kelly, for that introduction, and thank you, everyone who's attending. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity today to walk you through our Mobile Banking Competitive Index reports. And what I'd like to show you today is really some highlights from the deliverables that are sent to report buyers, including things like best-in-class insights for mobile banking. I want to go over in some depth our novel research methodology that we're using to rank banks in these reports. And then also I want to also share with you which banks and devices that we're including in our upcoming release, as Kelly mentioned, at the end of this month, and give you some information regarding the reasoning behind that. But first, for anyone on the line who may not be familiar with Key Lime Interactive, just wanted to give you a quick overview here. We just celebrated our 5th year anniversary. We focus on research surrounding acquiring customers, converting web traffic, differentiating your customer experience. We're known for custom research for our syndicated competitive index studies, like what I'll be discussing with you today, as well as strategic R&D. So I'd like to start really with highlighting what makes our reports different in terms of different or unique. These are our competitive index reports. So one of the things that's really unique to our reports is we're incorporating consumer preferences about features and capabilities that they consider to be critical for them to be having a successful experience in terms of their mobile banking. We provide exhaustive screenshots from behind the login screens of all of the competitors' mobile sites and apps. And then, of course, we're providing companies with unbiased third-party research, verification of capabilities available to customers, again, across all competitors. We provide very detailed analysis and descriptions of all of that. And we would like to really identify key success factors, best-in-class features, and as well as areas for improvement and why some companies are lagging behind and what it is that they're lagging behind in. So just to give you, in terms of the methodology, so I'd like to first start out with an overview, again, kind of talking about the uniqueness of how we're incorporating that value to consumer into our research. We're also then looking at a deep features and capabilities assessments. We're pairing it with that, and comparative feature ranking. Those things combined, we're coming up with our rankings. So that's kind of at a high level. And then, so I mentioned value to customer. So this is a really important aspect of our analysis. It's our 500-person survey of smartphone owners. So again, this is consumers, smartphone owners, they have primary personal checking accounts. We've got a mix of education, of genders, mix of household incomes. We're looking at a broad age range, 18 to 55 years old. Because this is an online survey, we're able to get a broad geographic reach as well. So in order to stay in touch with those consumer priorities, our survey asks consumers to weigh in and identify the features and capabilities that they consider, again, as I mentioned, critical for a successful experience for them using a mobile site or app offered by their banking institution. So the way that we do that, and I've provided some screenshots here because I really want to kind of give you a little insight into how we're collecting that information. So it's a great opportunity for us, again, to reach out to 500 people and gather this information, and we're doing this biannually, each time refreshing and getting the latest and greatest information. So we start out by talking, asking questions around sort of usage habits in terms of mobile banking, future habits, anticipated habits, past habits, all that kind of background information. And then the screenshot that I've provided here on the right-hand side is we then have them go through the exercise of kind of doing a virtual card sort, if you will. We have a list of capabilities or features on the left, possible features, and then we have sort of 4 different categories or rankings that we ask them to rank in terms of us being able to understand what is important and what is not important to them. So those different categories are things that are not important at all, things that are not important, things that are sort of indifferent or neutral, and then the nice-to-haves and the must-haves. So those are the 2 things that we're really interested in keeping abreast of, is what are those things that the majority of people are saying either are must-haves or nice-to-haves. So in terms of, this study not purely being a ranking study in terms of capabilities assessment, it's, again, we're using that consumer insights, the self-reported priorities that people are identifying, and we're helping to show emerging trends and opportunities that our clients have. So bridging that gap between consumer expectations and then what currently banking solutions are being offered. So we're able to show you trends and show you what is gaining ground over time. So in this table that I've provided here, it's a quick snapshot of some information that we collected back a year ago, so our release last June, and then the updated release, the most recent one, other than the one we're currently working on, our December release. And we showed some real shifts in priorities for people. So travel notifications, for example, increased in importance. So again, we're looking at that, people who said this is a nice-to-have or a must-have feature. We're now seeing a large increase over just a 6-month period in people being much more interested in these particular features. And then because we've collected this data and we're doing capabilities assessments, we're able to then on the right-hand column here show you who actually has these capabilities that the consumers are saying they're increasingly more interested in having. So what the buyers are gaining from this is they can then use this data that we're collecting to inform decisions about how to add that into their development cycle, how to stay on pace or even ahead of the curve in terms of their competitors and what their customers are really wanting. Sorry about the lag time there. So going a little further into our methodology. So obviously I've covered the sort of consumer component. Next key part of the research is the capabilities assessment. So this is an exhaustive examination and verification of each mobile site and app's capabilities. So we provide a tremendous amount of detail in terms of that, and this is a big part of what we're really collecting and benchmarking every 6 months. So our reviews of, again, all the primary mobile properties, full verification, we include screenshots of these different aspects, and again, looking across the whole competitive set. And then based on consumer insights and the capabilities assessment that I just talked about, we then can calculate a weighted score and ultimately a ranking order for the different banks based on those things combined. So in terms of the report, so I want to kind of show you some examples of how we sort of speak to best-in-class features, how we come up with that, and how we sort of highlight things that are unique and or well-implemented features. And on the right, you can see an example of a few features that are unique in this particular case to just one bank's app, and how these features are basically end up being differentiators in terms of why this bank is outperforming the rest in terms of the ability, in this case, to make deposits from its mobile app. So again, we're really liking to provide that information that shows what your competitors are doing, and again, tying it back to and aligning it with the consumer wants and needs and desires around that. And so who's delivering the most features and the most well-implemented and integrated features that people are desiring to have. On the left is an example of a best-in-class illustration, so complete with very detailed step-by-step screenshots, again behind the login screen, and also an explanation around the strengths of this particular feature, which is a bill pay feature. So in the case of, we would also summarize. Sometimes, even a best-in-class example, and this example is one where it's a best-in-class because it provides a really robust feature set. However, we also like to illustrate if there's somewhere that this app is falling short of several other competitors in one very particular aspect of the bill pay feature. So in this case, it was, if memory serves me correctly, it was not being able to search transaction histories. So it had great robust features, but it was falling short in one area. So again, we like to sort of get down to that level of detail of what people are doing that's different, that's unique, that's better than the competition, as well as areas where there's still room for improvement. So here's another example of the way that we sort of report the rankings, if you will. So on the left, you can see an example of how banks stack up, just purely rank 1 through 6 overall for a mobile site. So, Bank X is number 1, and it scores this. Bank Y is ranked number 2, etc. So we like to provide that high level for each of the different mobile properties, but then on the right, you can see that we take it one step further, and we really like to further break it down by category. So you can really see which banks excel or lag behind, again, in terms of very specific features or capabilities or aspects of either a mobile app or, in this case, the mobile site. So not only are we saying, Bank X is the best, top-ranked site for mobile, top-ranked bank for mobile site, but we're showing you why. And then even though, again, they might be the number 1 ranked site, when you're looking at a greater level of detail here, and you say, oh, wow, but they're lagging behind in the functionality around making deposits, right? So very interesting in terms of being able to get to that granular level and see that, there's a little bit more behind, and again, being very transparent of what's behind the rankings and providing different levels of detail and information. So I'd like to just address one question I'm getting. Again, this is a live interactive webinar, so I'm happy to answer a question. So a question has come up from a participant around what is travel notification. So I had said that this was an emerging opportunity that we've seen over the last 6 months in increased interest in having this available on the mobile platform. So what travel notification is, and I'm not sure if this has happened to you, but it's actually personally happened to me. I travel a lot, and when I go out of town, it has happened to me a couple times that I go to a new location that I don't typically go to, and my bank thinks that there's some sort of fraud alert going on and somebody's out spending lots of money on my debit card, when actually it's just me on vacation having fun. So this is a way, from your mobile app, you realize you've gone on vacation, you're in Hawaii, you're on the beach, you're spending all kinds of money, or you're wherever, you're in New York City and you're buying expensive clothes and this and that. It's a way to inform your bank, oh shoot, I forgot to let them know. I don't want them to shut down my card thinking that this is a fraud alert. I've gotten phone calls very early in the morning with my bank checking that I am in fact in a location X or Y. So that's what travel notification is. So sorry to get back on track, but again, I'm happy to answer questions as they come up. We'll do our best to do that while we're going along here. So again, back to the slide at hand, really, again, trying to be very transparent about what's being sort of rolled up into our overall rankings, whether it's the overall category or any subcategory of app or mobile site. And then, so what I'd like to now talk about is the release we're currently working on. So it is now June 11th. We are due for our next release to come out in just 2.5 weeks on the 30th. So we're busy working away, collecting all that great data from the consumers, as well as doing our features assessment. We are including These 6 top U.S. retail banks in our June release, so B of A, Citi, Chase, Wells Fargo, USAA, and for the first time, we've decided to include U.S. Bank this year. So that is new to the release, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment, a little more detail. So which mobile properties are we reviewing? So obviously we're looking at all the mobile sites. We're looking at the apps on both the iPhone and the Android phone, as well as looking at the iPad apps and the Android tablet apps. So again, one of the new changes that we're excited to be announcing is that we're looking at the Android tablet. Previously, we had been looking at the Kindle Fire, and I want to talk a little bit about these changes that they're making. So again, this is the first time we're announcing some of these additions for our upcoming release, and happy to share with you some of the rationale behind that. So U.S. Bank is the 5th largest bank in terms of total deposits and assets. We already have the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 largest banks in terms of assets and deposits in the study. And then the other thing about U.S. Bank, more than just it being the 5th largest bank in the United States, they really, have been developing a lot of innovative features and capabilities over time, even starting back as far as 2010 when they were one of the first top banks to really offer photo check deposit feature. They weren't the first, but they were among the first. And then much more recently, and this is what's really sort of, become more obvious to us that we should be assessing and including them as part of the competitive set. Last year, the addition of the mobile photo bill pay feature, which automatically will, using the capabilities of the device's camera, you can grab information right from your paper statement, and then you can set up a new biller or pay a bill whenever, wherever from your mobile device. And then very recently, so in 2014, just back in March, they've set up several more ways to send and receive some funds, which are quite fun and interesting. So one that you can actually send money along with a greeting and personal email message for a birthday, a wedding, holiday, any kind of special occasion. You can also now even, if you need to ask someone for money, you can use the request money feature, which again will send out a request, monitor response, and when you've received the funds. So they're doing some really interesting things, and we're very excited to be adding them into our report this coming June. And then as far as the switch from the Kindle Fire to the Android tablet, so at the end of last year, the fourth quarter numbers were really showing a significant increase in Android tablet shipments, up to 41 million shipments just in the last quarter, so in the holiday season, purchasing season, versus just under 6 million of the Amazon that Amazon shipped in terms of the Kindle Fire. So again, we're kind of looking at that. They've also been grabbing a little market share from the iPad too, and we're very interested in seeing adding them into our report this year. So in terms of the report that we're currently working on, and again, will be released at the end of the month, what's included in that. So I kind of want to go over a little more detailed analysis of kind of what you can expect to be in there, in addition to just kind of, so just in terms of, I've only showed you little bits and pieces. So we've got the complete listing of the overall rankings. So as well as, so again, we take all of the sort of subcategories that I have listed here, so mobile site, iPhone app, Android phone app, iPad app, and Android tablet, and we roll those up into an overall score, but we also are ranking each of those individual categories. We've got a comparative list of current mobile capabilities for each mobile app and site, again, divided up by those categories, and it's an exhaustive comparative list. Detailed scoring breakdown of the capabilities and features that are reviewed, comprehensive assessment of those best-in-class features. I showed you a little bit of an insight into kind of how we handle that, user feedback collected about feature preferences, and again, that's kind of the highlight of that piece. As well, but as well, we also talk about that habits and usage relating to mobile banking, and we're gathering that information again because we're looking at things and how they're trending over time, right? So we're very interested in how those habits, usage, and feature requests and preferences are changing over time. And then, of course, we also provide in sort of an appendix an exhaustive list of all the mobile apps that are currently available from the 6 banks. We're only assessing the primary apps for each bank, but we're looking at an exhaustive list as well. So as I've mentioned a couple times, this is published biannually. Our next release date is this month, and then the other release date we also release at the end of December every year. So for today, we are offering, and I strongly encourage you to take advantage of this special webinar pricing that we're offering. So I'd like to share this with you. So we have this offer includes that if you book purchasing this report by this Friday, so the 13th, you can lock down this webinar-only rate. So we have 2 different columns here. So single report, standard pricing is $12,000. Annual report, which means again you get two releases, December and June, for a discounted rate of $21,500. That is the standard price. We're knocking it further down for discount pricing, which is below $10,008 for the single report, and for an annual subscription, $18,275. So if you're interested in this, I strongly recommend you jot down Tracy Antol can be contacted, and here's her email, and or call her. So again, if you're interested in that, I encourage you to follow up on that. I would love to try to get to some of the Q&A, and happy to answer some questions. Okay. So one of the questions that I'd like to address, and I'd like to go back to the slide to talk about it. So the question was posed, what about banks who are not included, right, on this list, this competitive set? So, it's interesting because, we're reviewing six banks, mobile properties, but this is something that we offer custom reports that are also available for any financial institution that's not listed here. And it's something that actually we're very used to doing, and I'm actually currently working on 3 customized versions of a report for several different banks that are not in the standard competitive set. So that's something that we highly recommend, and we sort of have gotten used to. So that is that question, and I'm looking at what other questions we have. So someone was asking if a bank is let me just make sure I understand the question here. So if a bank is sort of penalized for the fact that they may not have an app for, let's say, the tablet app or something like that, and whether they're penalized for that, for not having an app for a particular platform. Interesting question. In this particular study that we do, and we do a number of these competitive index reports in different industries, for this one, all of these banks that were included actually have apps and mobile sites across all properties. However, for instance, in our mobile auto insurance report, there are only 3 out of the 7 competitors that we look at in that industry who have an iPad app. Because that number is so low, so in this case it's less than 50% of the competitive set, we don't figure that as being an industry standard, and we do it as a sort of a supplementary, just FYI for your information analysis around those 3 apps, but we don't include it in the actual ranking or the scoring. If it was 6 out of 7 competitors, then that 7th one, because they're not sort of meeting the standard, would be probably getting, penalized for that. But in the banking study, we have a full assessment and set across the board. Okay. Start looking at some other questions here. So, question about if we include information about changes over time. So in terms of from one release to the next, and how we show that. So, I've talked a little bit to this, but I would definitely say that one of the things that we do show is we talk about, and again, I alluded to this up front, is the consumer trends. So that's something that's really, really important that we feel is such a value add and something that, again, is unique about our offering, and we have this tremendously rich data from 500 consumers of mobile banking, and we really talk a lot about the trends over time and how it's shifting and where priorities are shifting for the customers and the consumers, and that's one thing. Another thing that we relay in each release is if we see a bank that, let's say, ranks number 2 in December, for instance, for a mobile site, and then in this current release, let's say that they jumped up to the number 1 spot, we will definitely highlight that, and then we also provide all the information behind why. Why did that change happen? Was it that they improved their offering? Was it that something else happened? Was it that consumer needs are shifting? And so we really try to get into the nuance of why people's ranking and performance is sort of moving up or down over time. So we are just about out of time. I think, I'm not sure if there's any more questions. Not sure I understand that question. I'm sorry, I'm going through these questions. Consumer segmented. So someone asked about if consumers are segmented so that we can see which features are most important to our target client base. In terms of consumers being segmented, we have not. I mean, in our custom research, we certainly look at segmentation. We do a lot of segmentation analysis in these reports, and I'm going to go back to our panel slide, consumer panel. We're really looking at a broad, we're casting a broad net again of, they're smartphone owners. They have primary checking accounts. Most are using, mobile banking. The other thing that we're checking over time is really the percentage of people who are preferring. So this is an example of the kind of information that we're collecting that, again, our clients are finding very compelling and interesting way to keep abreast of this is over time, is it shifting from I primarily use the mobile web, I primarily use my bank's app, what they prefer, do they do both, is there, where is that sort of moving and trending? But in terms of like specific segmentation, not something that we do. We're really looking at this as trying to be as broad as possible of all mobile banking users, customers. So I see that we're coming up on the half hour, and I just think probably a good time to wrap things up. We do have other questions that we didn't get time to cover, unfortunately, but we will definitely follow up with you via email after we close out here today. Thank you for your questions, and thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate the time, and we're happy to answer any questions. Again, I want to kind of remind you, if you want to take advantage of the special webinar pricing, we encourage that. And then if you want to follow up with us and learn more about either the reports, about Key Lime Interactive, anything else, highly encourage you to reach out to us and get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you again very much for your attendance today.